Tonight, back on the stand, a second full day of testimony for the prosecution's final witness.
Whether that is consistent with a collision or a impact with Mr. John O'Keefe.
It is consistent with the collision.
But this time, the defense got their chance to cross-examine him.
Ask me about the opinion of a medical examiner. I'm not a medical.
Only one person at a time.
How the defense worked to poke holes in his findings. But was this approach effective? Plus, a key ruling from the judge.
The jurors are as well positioned to draw or reject the inference as is the expert.
Our legal experts break down the importance of her decision. Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts now.
For the second straight day, we saw only one witness take the stand. The difference today was who got to ask questions of Dr. Judson Welcher. Good evening, I'm Glenn Jones.
And I'm Jason Monahan. Today, the defense got their chance to cross-examine Welcher. Robert Alessi had the job to do that today and spent the day crossing him. Our Melody Mendez has been covering it all from the courthouse in Dedham. Melody?
JC, Glenn, look, Robert Alessi went item by item, picking apart Welcher's testimony from the day prior, basically pointing at information that he says Welcher did not consider when coming up with potential theories. He focused on what he didn't have versus what he did. Take a look. Robert Alessi started his cross focusing on the importance of being objective, asking Dr. Welcher about confirmation bias when someone selectively gathers evidence to confirm a theory.
An example of confirmation bias is not considering alternative hypotheses.
Alessi narrowed in on Welcher's testimony that John O'Keefe wouldn't necessarily have had any broken bones or injuries to his lower extremities after potential impact with Reed's SUV. But later in the day, Alessi pointed out the report Welcher used about common injuries and pedestrian strikes is 46 years old.
Are you aware that the currently understood most common injuries as a result of pedestrian motor vehicle collisions are injuries to the lower extremities?
It wouldn't surprise me if that's accurate.
Over and over again, Alessi focusing on key data Welcher did not have, like John O'Keefe's body position when he was allegedly hit. Information that in his own testimony about the differences between injuries from side swipes versus direct impact, Welcher noted would be of crucial importance.
Pedestrian impacts and how you move post-impact are very sensitive to your exact body position.
Welcher multiple times on the stand today acknowledging that key piece of data missing, like in this exchange about the height of the spoiler on Reed's SUV.
We don't know his exact body position at the point of impact, nor do we know the exact position on the ground. So, which is part of the reason why I haven't tried to exactly simulate this.
But keep in mind, fewer than 24 hours ago, the doctor testified about dressing like O'Keefe, buying a replica of Reed's car, and doing a simulation, something he called the blue paint test. Alessi took aim at another missing component of that test.
You didn't do a blue paint test with the vehicle going at 20 miles per hour, correct?
That is correct. I was not going to hit myself with a Lexus at 20 miles an hour.
You could have done other tests where the vehicle was going at 20 miles per hour if you used a crash test dummy, correct? You could have done that.
If you used the right crash test dummy, right, and then to set up the test, you have to know everything about the parameters. And so, again, pedestrian impacts are so very sensitive to initial angles. If I were to do a test and it was off a tiny, tiny bit and we got some different results, I would be in here having to defend it. Well, your own testing didn't show it. Point is we don't have enough information to be able to conduct that testing.
Now, nearing the end of the day, I want to mention this because this was very important, but Alessi pressed Judson on findings that he says Reed's SUV went 87 feet in reverse. 87 feet, that's the distance between bases on a baseball diamond. 87 feet in reverse at 24 miles per hour in the dark, in a blizzard, and didn't collide with any other vehicles or leave the road. And keep in mind, there were up to 16 people inside the Albert home at any given time throughout the course of that night. So vehicles outside on that small street, as you can imagine. JC, Glenn, back to you.
Melody, let's dive deeper into Robert Alessi's cross of Dr. Welcher. We're joined now by NBC 10 Boston chief legal analyst Michael Coyne, as well as former prosecutor Margaret McLean. Margaret, welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We are going to go into Alessi and the questioning that he had for Welcher about the work he conducted. Let's take a listen to another portion of that.
But it's also possible that under your theory that a collision occurred, that that arm could have been impacted any part of the back of the vehicle. That's possible, isn't it?
That's not probable, no.
I'm asking, is it possible?
Anything is possible. I don't deal in possibilities. I deal in probabilities. It's not probable.
But you don't know exactly where the point of impact was.
So within the range of the light and the exact angle of the hand, no, I don't.
Okay, so this is much different than how the defense responded to the prosecution's last expert witness, which was the brain surgeon, Isaac Wolf. He spent just a couple of minutes, asked a couple of questions, and he was done. So this has been all day today. We're not done. He's going to continue again tomorrow. So my question to both of you is, why wouldn't the defense on this just let their experts come up to refute what they had to say? Their experts are ARCA. Let them come up and say, here's our version of it, because what happened today was a lot of Alessi pushing and for their witness to say, but you don't understand the science. So it was almost like going back and forth between two people who would not agree that they don't understand the material.
Because this is the Commonwealth's last and most critical witness. And what he's done is tied all of that data that we heard earlier on and the cell phone battery and all the science together, and now pretty emphatically has said that her vehicle struck John O'Keefe at 12:30 or so, and obviously then contributed to his death. This is a crucial witness. I think he was just as strong as the Commonwealth needed him to be, and stood up fairly well on cross.
Did you find that Alessi could poke any holes into what was this expert witness's theory?
Well, first of all, I don't think this was Alessi's best day. He went around and around and around with the witness. He got complicated. He's going head to head with an engineer, and I think he should have made his small points, right? And then, sit down after that. For example, I really liked the area where he talked about the berm. He said to the witness, well, you didn't step onto the property, and you didn't account for this 4-inch berm, and that was very good. So saying, well, when you did, he should have gone on and said, well, when you did your tests, that could be 4 inches, so there goes all your calculations, throwing it out. Instead, he got so caught up in the weeds and in that complicated engineering thing. And yes, I agree with you. Wait for the ARCA witnesses, and they'll say whatever he wants them to say.
Let's talk more about that. We're going to go to Dr. Welcher, quite possibly, as you mentioned, the most important prosecution witness. Once the prosecution rests, the defense, as we know, will get their chance to present evidence. They're expected to call ARCA, that I mentioned, the reconstructionist, Drs. Daniel Wolf and Andrew Rentschler, both central figures in the first trial, both hired by the federal government as part of an investigation into the case. They testified that John O'Keefe's injuries were not consistent with being struck by a vehicle. Take a listen.
I didn't have enough evidence based on what I was provided, and even looking at the additional evidence that I became aware of after the fact, there's still no evidence. I mean, you can't deny the science and the physics as to what would have happened if he was struck by the vehicle. So anything past that, you have to somehow overcome that hurdle, which is very difficult to do.
So can you explain the strategy? I mean, expert against expert seems like a pretty clean way to go versus, as you were saying, all the minutia that Alessi got into today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what he should do, is just wait for his own expert. The one thing I will say, though, as far as Dr. Welcher, maybe Alessi did a good thing, and that many people thought that Welcher came across conceited and like a total jerk. So maybe the jury won't like him as a result.
And that's a possibility. And, oftentimes you have dueling experts. And so the question at the end of the day becomes, which one are they more likely to believe? And the cross-examination on ARCA is going to be pretty brutal. They've destroyed all their documents. She gave Attorney Brennan a voir dire already with respect to a lot of it. If you think he's good on redirect, which he is very good on cross-examination.
Well, let me ask you one specific question about Dr. Welcher. Did he repair for the prosecution the potential damage done by Shannon Burgess?
I think so far. Now, I think we'll see some of that cross-examination about Burgess tomorrow when they finish up. But I do think he's restored some respectability to the company by showing what his findings were and then staying strong throughout what is a pretty vigorous cross-examination by a skilled advocate. I just think I agree that he got in the weeds today. I don't think you cross-examine a PhD in mechanical engineering and physics about physics.
Right.
Let's go now to a key ruling from Judge Cannoni that happened before testimony even began today. She announced her decision away from the jury. Take a listen.
Dr. Welcher can testify that the data he downloaded and analyzed and the damage to the Lexus is consistent with Ms. Reed's vehicle being in a collision. In addition, Dr. Welcher can testify that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries are consistent with his having been struck by a Lexus that is physically identical to Ms. Reed's Lexus. However, he may not testify that Ms. Reed's Lexus collided with Mr. O'Keefe because that conclusion is not based on the application of reliable scientific methodology.
So basically, everything that Welcher testified on direct is in, except for that last comment that he made, because it's a Lexus, it's John O'Keefe. You just can't place Karen Reed and John O'Keefe together. That's the ruling. Is it the right one?
Yeah, it's within the judge's discretion. What she's afraid of, or what the law says, is that you don't want to invade the province of the jury. They can't opine on the ultimate issue. Now, there's some technicalities there, so what she did is she said, you can testify that it is consistent with being struck by Miss Reed's vehicle, and that's just what he did. You just can't say that in his opinion, that's exactly what happened.
Well, I suppose, Margaret, a point we should not overlook is that perhaps this witness in 2 trials made the best effort to lay out the narrative connected to the prosecution's theory. I mean, up until now, there have been so many questions around what the injuries are, what speed the car was moving at. He gave us a plausible narrative.
He certainly did, especially with the lacerations on O'Keefe's arm. So many people think it's the dog bite, but he, using the blue paint, the jurors may think that's very effective because that blue paint was in the area where those lacerations were. So they may find that very credible.
All right, it's going to come down to the battle of the experts on accident reconstruction. Thank you very much. Margaret McLean, welcome to Canton Confidential. It's so great to have you here. Michael, you'll be sticking around. We never let you go far. Coming up, who paid for Aperture to buy a replica of Karen Reed's car? That's the question many of us have been asking. What Dr. Welcher is now revealing about the purchase. You're watching Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial.
Don't miss any of the Karen Reed murder trial. Get the full recap of what happened in court, expert analysis, and what we could see next. This is coverage you won't see anywhere else. Canton Confidential, weeknights at 7 on NBC 10 Boston.
You are a senior vice president of Aperture, are you not?
I am.
You would know, wouldn't you, if your firm was not getting paid for work since September 23rd of 2024, wouldn't you?
No, probably not.
Michael Coyne is back with us, and we're joined now by our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell. So that, of course, was Robert Alessi's cross-examination of Dr. Judson Welcher. As you saw, he was asking a number of questions as it relates to what Aperture is being paid. Sue, I wanted to just ask you, when I think about the cross-examination of Ian Whiffen, the cell phone expert, I kind of know exactly what Alessi was trying to elicit. The same is true for Shannon Burgess. Here, I'm not so sure. The focus here on what was being spent doesn't seem like a key point. In fact, I'm not at all surprised.
Well, you know whose fault that is? The witness's fault. And I'll tell you why. There were 3 questions that Alessi asked at the beginning. The first was, what is the scientific method? I think we all saw that in our very first chapter of every single textbook. Have you been employed by the state? Do you have a contract? That took 30 minutes for him to answer. So the reason you're concerned about why should I care about this is instead of just answering it, he evaded it. He got very, I said he was very like the trooper who will go unnamed at the moment, you know, trying to avoid answering things that are unimportant, right? Scientific method. Do you have a contract? Is this your company? How much are you being paid? That should take 5 minutes. It took almost 30 minutes, and it was just a waste of my taxpayer dollars because he's going to have to come back tomorrow. It's a waste of the juror's time, right? And he kept just ignoring the judge's direction.
I don't know, Sue. Isn't the flip of that, though? Why is Robert Alessi asking those questions? He knows the answers to them, and they don't really provide much material
Doesn't
for the
matter,
defense.
then he should just answer them. What's the big deal? He's an expert witness. He gets paid by the state. The same is true for the defense. They're hiring expert witnesses, and Hank Brennan's going to get up and say, are you being paid to be here today?
Michael, you look like you're ready.
And is going to be just as evasive. One of the most significant ways you try to impeach an expert witness is the fact that they've been paid to testify. And if you've been paid to testify, you are more likely to lie for the person who's paying you. That's the basic principle. And the more you've been paid, and here it sounds like it's approaching about $500,000, the greater the likelihood. He spent too much time on it. And Sue's right in part. He was evasive about it. They all are going to be evasive. Oh, I don't know. They didn't show up for free. Same thing happened with ARCA witnesses in the first case. Oh, I don't know. We weren't being paid. And then as it turns out, they got paid on July as soon as the case was over. They should just admit it. It's a given. You understand that when you hire these experts, you pay for their testimony, and they would say, you pay for my time and expertise, not my testimony.
And it's so relatable to be on the jury and have somebody who owns a company and you don't know if he's making any money from it. I mean, I totally relate to that.
That was sarcasm.
Dr. Welcher.
Bosses are on the phone.
Dr. Welcher brought up a case from outside of Massachusetts about a pedestrian accident where the pedestrian died and had no bone breaks, no broken bones. It really aligned with the prosecution's theory of the case. Michael, did it land? And
it landed with me.
It landed
solidly
with you.
Because that's what everyone has been wondering. How could this vehicle hit him and not cause any broken bones? The picture did it, and the illustration you had did it. And just the image that he said a couple times, you have a 6,000-pound vehicle hitting a 216-pound man. What do you think is going to give? To me, there was a number of pieces like that that helped to solidify the government's case. If she's convicted, it'll be based on her statements and the science that's now been tied together.
Yeah, I did feel like a big moment. All right, Dr. Welcher testified his company, Aperture, bought a Lexus similar to the one owned by Karen Reed in order to perform his testing. Just before that testimony, we got this question from Kate. Who pays for that? Does the Commonwealth? Dr. Welcher addressed that question on a cross-examination today.
We paid for the Lexus. We're keeping it till the trial's over. We're selling it and charging the Commonwealth the difference in the price.
Exactly. That was where I was going, sir.
But they're only paying the difference. So, and in theory, if we sell it for more in California, then we'll reduce the bill.
Okay, I don't want to speculate. I just wanted to see what the obligation was.
So the obligation is the difference.
Exactly. So the obligation is the difference.
All right, Michael, I can't resist to ask you two questions on this. The first one, what we just heard there, is that rare or typical? And secondly, isn't there a good chance this vehicle is going to sell for more than it's worth because it was associated with the Karen Reed trial?
Well, the fact is that, you know, the macabre really does appeal to a lot of people, and so it very well may sell for more than what they purchased it for. It is very unusual. This is in private industry, you would probably likely see this type of money paid on experts and their equipment like this case has done. It's unusual, highly unusual for the government to have spent so much money purchasing a $60,000 plus Lexus and then putting it through all of these extensive tests.
Interesting.
All right, let's talk about the new motion by the prosecution. It was prompted by the testimony of Dr. Welcher's colleague at Aperture, Shannon Burgess. Last week on Cross, the defense questioned his educational background, pointed out outdated information on his resume. Take a listen.
Is it correct that there you state Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration, University of Alabama - Birmingham, Alabama, 2024? Did I read that correctly?
You did read that correctly. And this was filed in 2023.
In new motion, the prosecution is looking to avoid a similar situation, saying it wasn't provided with certain documents ahead of time. The motion reads, quote, The effort of providing documents as a witness is being confronted with documents is improper, trial by ambush, a violation of Rule 14, and creates needless delay, resulting in objections, unnecessary sidebars, and a waste of time for the jury. Michael, prosecution have a point?
Not here. I think on the Rule 14 violations generally, they're right. They shouldn't be trial by ambush. They should disclose. This one is a little different. They should have known what was out there with respect to his resume and qualifications. Blaming the defendant at this point, to me, is not appropriate. They should have figured this out beforehand. They're the ones that picked the witness.
Sue, it does seem like an attempt at saving face for the prosecution.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or for Mr. Burgess.
Yeah.
Or that, yeah.
I mean, I hate to project onto the jury, but I imagine there's a couple of people on this jury who hire people. I could tell by the way they were paying attention to this LinkedIn information. So, you know, it's another little check off a box of something that people might have a doubt about.
I remember you said there was a little grimace from some of the jury members who ordinarily are stoic, so you know that this one left an impression on them.
Your LinkedIn profile, and you went, oh.
All right, Sue O'Connell, Michael Coyne, thank you very much for joining us once again. If you have questions about this case, keep them coming our way. The email address is on your screen, canton.confidential@nbcuni.com. We'll answer as many questions as we can.
And remember to join us every weeknight at 7 on NBC 10 Boston. We'll have a full recap of the latest developments from court, as well as legal analysis. Plus, this week's episodes will be streaming on Peacock starting Sunday. You're watching Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial.